Hello everybody and welcome to a Dwarf Fortress tutorial. In this video, I'm going to be covering minecarts. It's quite a long and complicated subject. However, if you stick around and you give me a little bit of time, I hope that I will be able to explain it all as concisely and as quickly as possible. Minecarts have a lot of potential uses in Dwarf Fortress, from yeeting dwarves off cliffs to transporting goods from place to place. In this video, I'm going to be showing you the basic logic of minecarts, explaining how they work and their purposes. And then, by the end of this video, I hope that you will be able to set up a basic minecart track yourself. So, let's get started. It wouldn't be a minecart track without a minecart track, so let's build ourselves a minecart track. We're going to talk about the two different types of minecart tracks in the next few seconds. This is a constructed minecart track, which can be constructed out of just about anything. It is found in the build menu under constructions. You simply click on point A and drag it to point B where you want the minecart track to go. Then from there, you select the type of material. Once you've finished constructing the minecart track, you can simply add on to the minecart track by grabbing the construct minecart track tool and pulling it in a different direction. You can also add multiple routes onto this and make quite complicated tracks, similar to like train tracks, if you will. The second type of track I would like to show you in this video is a smoothed or engraved track. An engraved track is used in a very similar way to the current track. However, instead of using materials, they require open stone on the ground. So this can either be done above ground or below ground as long as you have open stone. So I'm going to click and drag, and we are going to create an additional portion to this track. And then once I unpause the game, the dwarves will come running over here and engrave the track on the ground. So if you're using dirt or if you're building over top of something, you want to be constructing your tracks like I did back there. And if you're using open stone, feel free to use these engraved tracks. Now let's set up a little basic minecart route. What we're going to do is we're going to click on the Set Hauling Routes for Minecarts button. Then from there, I'm going to add a new route. Now, if you would like to add a cart to a track and just tell them to push it along the track, which is all that we're going to do, we're going to select Add a Stop to this route, which can be a minecart stop, or it can just be a piece of track. We're going to select right here. And just to make sure that we get the dwarves pushing a cart, we need to add a cart to it. Assign minecart to this route. We're going to add this wooden minecart, which I made up here not too long ago, and this minecart is going to be placed on the front of the track right here by a dwarf. Now, as you can see right here, there's a bunch of different things already installed in here, a whole bunch of different options. If we click on this button, we're going to get a little bit of an idea. I'm going to clear these bottom two just so things are a little bit easier to look at. We can set whether or not we want them to push the minecart, kick the minecart, or ride in the minecart, and the direction we want the minecart to go. If we get them to push the minecart, they will simply push the minecart along the track. This is the safest option. Kicking the minecart can get a little bit hazardous, as if dwarves get the minecarts going a little bit too fast, it can either derail or turn other dwarves into flying red mist. The third option here is riding it, which is a questionable decision. That's all I'll say. So, we're going to get this dwarf to push the minecart. Now, because we're not actually asking the minecart to be filled with anything, we just want it to push along the track as an example, I'm actually going to click this button. So, it's just going to push it immediately regardless of the amount of stuff in it. Now, there's several different options on this side before we drive into just pushing the minecart. I can say, glide east immediately when full of any items, glide east immediately when full of desired items. So, glide east immediately when full of any items. This could be liquids, this could be things that are not planned to be in the minecart that are in the minecart because things fell into them, or this can just simply be things that are being loaded into the minecart kind of at random, and it's less specific. But we just want it to glide. So we're going to say glide east immediately, at most 100%, but immediately. So now we just need to wait for a dwarf to come over here and push the minecart. And now you're going to wonder, why are they not pushing the minecart anywhere? Well, we haven't told them to push the minecart anywhere. So what we're going to do is we're going to pop back into this screen. We're going to add a second stop right down here, and then now they push the minecart. Sweet. Awesome. We've made some progress. Maybe I want them to push the minecart back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the conditions screen for the stop 2. I'm going to say push up immediately, and let's see what happens. And would you look at that? Absolutely miraculous. I'm going to spend a few seconds and set up a new route for us, and then we're going to talk about track stops. Now, track stops, as you can see, you don't actually need them. You can just place the minecart wherever you want on the track, but we're going to be using a track stop for this particular build. So the way we're going to do this is I'm going to place a track stop right here. Now, this track stop allows us to have several different functions. If it's powered, which we'll get to in a minute on the next track, you can add brakes. So over here, you can see your braking functions. So this is maximum brakes, meaning it'll slam to a halt regardless, unless it's being pushed by a dwarf. So essentially, if it's kicked, it'll slam to a halt. Second option here is slightly less brakes, and then slightly less brakes, and slightly less brakes, and then no brakes. It'll just go through. But more importantly, we can tell them to dump materials out of the minecart. So let's say we want them to have a stop right here in the middle, and we want them to dump the items right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click north, and we're going to select the spot right there. Now let's say we want them to stop and load the minecart elsewhere on the track. Let's go down to the bottom here, and we're not going to select it to dump in a particular angle. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go slightly further down, and I'm going to grab the stockpiles button, and I'm going to place a stockpile right here. And let's just fill this up with wood. As the dwarves begin filling this up, we're going to add this and this into a route and tell them to dump it over here. Let's just say that we're cutting a lot of wood at one section of the fortress, and we want them, instead of all just hauling the wood all at once, we want all of the wood to be put into one specific spot very quickly, and less dwarves to be actively working on the job of hauling the wood into the fortress. This is definitely a very effective way of cutting down on jobs, and it gives you a whole bunch of interesting little options here. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a route to this track. I'm going to click on Add a New Route, and then I'm going to add the first stop to the route. And then just to make our lives easy, we're going to add a stop to the second route, or to the second stop up there. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to tell the minecart that it's going to load up with wood at stop 1, which is, of course, the lower one. We're going to tell the minecart that it's going to load from here, and then we're going to tell the minecart that it's going to be pushed to the left when at least 50% full. So now, dwarves are going to guide it to the left when it's at least 50% full of wood from this stockpile. Now, all that we have to do is we have to add this minecart back to the route, and then simply wait for the dwarves to deliver it, which shouldn't take too long. As we can see, Inod here is doing the task already, running the minecart down to the track stop. They've placed the track stop, and now we just need to wait for the dwarves to begin filling the minecart. As they come down, they begin loading it up. Now, I've seen people say that this is less efficient than simply hauling. It can be, depending on how you set it up. If you're setting it up so that all of the stuff goes into a very specific stockpile, this can actually be significantly more efficient. But what you may run into is, well, I've run out of resources in this location. Say you're transporting boulders, and then the boulder route needs to be deconstructed. You have to be willing to construct, deconstruct, and reconstruct the minecart routes as they are needed. It is very rare that you'll end up with a permanent need for a minecart route, with the exception of maybe fishing in one location and delivering that fish halfway across the map. It's up to you, really, how you wish to manage your fortress, but I do find that this can be significantly more efficient. And also, you may notice, the minecart's stuck up here now. Well, we need to tell them, when empty of specific items, glide this way, right? So, glide east immediately when it's empty. So now somebody's going to run down, and we're going to get ourselves a little loop going. We're going to have somebody come over here, push the minecart down here, and then push it up and around. And then they fill up the minecart as soon as the children are done playing. Children love doing these jobs. It's actually a very good job for children. And there we go. It's completed. Look how easy that was. So that's a very basic minecart route. Once again, you can make these as large or as small as you would like. It's really up to you. The world's genuinely your oyster in this one. The next thing we're going to cover in this video, and one of the last things we're going to cover in this video, is powered minecarts. Let's say you want your things to go a little bit faster. Well, let's try that out and see what we can come up with. So now I have the basic pieces set up to make a powered minecart track. Right here you can see that we have a mechanics workshop. Now this mechanics workshop is going to be making us a mechanism, because we're going to need a couple mechanisms for this job. So I'm going to add a few jobs to that, so that the dwarves can work on that in the background. Now what we're going to be doing is powering a minecart track. So it's going to be a very simple setup. What we're going to do is we're going to power the minecart from here over to here. That is it. And we're also going to be discussing the act of kicking a minecart track. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a piece of wall right here so that there's nothing for it to crash into when it hits the other side. I don't really want this to go skidding off the track. When you're powering minecarts, what you really want to do is make sure that whenever there is a curve in the track of any sort, such as this as example, there is no way for it to go flying off the track, because it can and it will. Dwarves will, by default, attempt to not walk on minecart tracks because, while dwarves can be a little silly at times, they're not that stupid in most cases. However, if you're not particularly careful with how you set these tracks up and you put them in very heavy trafficked zones, you might end up turning a dwarf into a very unfortunate walking vegetable and not so much of a dwarf anymore. So now that we have this little track set up with our little blockades here so that they can't go flying off the track, we're going to do what we did previously. We are going to build a track stop. So I'm going to jump over to constructions here, and we're going to make a track stop, and this track stop is going to go at the end here. And once again, it's going to be set to dump to the south, okay? So we're going to set this to dump down, and it's going to be placed right here. We're going to make the stop out of wood, and we're going to make a second stop up top. And then what we're going to do is we are going to build our track rollers, which are what's going to power the track. Track rollers are pretty simple. They're made out of mechanisms, and they are made out of rope. By default, you will embark with rope, but you'll need to make some mechanisms as we did up there. Then up here, you can select your speed. I, of course, say ludicrous speed, because what kind of coward do you think I am? From here, we can click and drag, and it's going to use varying numbers of ropes and mechanisms based on the size, and you'll also get more acceleration. We're going to select our mechanisms. We're going to need 2 of them, and we're going to need 1 rope to make this. The dwarves are going to deliver the pieces, and while they're doing that, we're going to set up our power for it, and we're going to do that by making an axle. Now, axles can either go horizontal or north to south and can just be connected to the side of your windmill here, or water wheel, or however you would like to power it. And then simply place the logs in, and that will be delivered. These don't use very much power, and the windmills all produce 40, so you're pretty safe without having a ton of power generation for this kind of setup. Then what we're going to do is exactly what we did previously. I'm going to jump over to the Minecarts menu. We're going to add a route, and it's going to go right here. And then I'm going to go down to the wood section, and we're going to add all of the wood. We're going to tell them to load from here, and we're going to say something pretty specific that is different. I'm actually going to remove all of these. We're going to add a new one. I'm going to say, immediately when empty of desired items. No. When always at least 75% full. I'm going to tell them to kick it. Now, kicking it is going to send it flying around this track at the speed of whatever dwarf sound is, or speed of sound is. Now, of course, the last thing we got to do is add the minecart to the track. Once we've done this, well, it's already 20% full from the last one. It's going to be a little bit heavier for our dwarf. Once we've done that, the dwarves are going to simply deliver the track to the location where it needs to be. They're going to go pick it up from the previous track. They're going to run all the way past our other demonstrations over here. And little Inod here is probably going to be the dwarf to boot this off. But we'll see if other dwarves begin loading it quickly or not. Regardless, there's the minecart. And now we just simply need to wait for dwarves to load this up, which should happen pretty quickly. Here they come. They are now loading the minecart up. And as soon as the minecart is ready to go, they're going to kick it. And there it goes. Would you look at that? And of course, it unloads at the location. So systems like this, with powered minecart rails, can very quickly increase the speed at which you're able to deliver items. They're going down hills or are slightly powered. As long as you're making sure that it's not going to go flying off the rails, this can be quite an efficient method of making sure you get a bunch of items in a location quickly. So now the last thing I want to do with this tutorial series is I want to have a little bit of fun. We're going to power one more minecart track, except this time we're going to put a dwarf in it and just see what happens. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to modify this track setup we have already. I'm going to remove one of the minecart stops, and then we're going to add a little bit of power to this. So I'm going to place a windmill right here, which takes 4 logs, of course. And then I'm going to go back into the power section, and I'm going to add ourselves a little bit of power, and then I'm going to go and add ourselves a roller. Now, the roller is going to go up this way. Pretty simple, right? And then we're going to add our mechanisms and our ropes. And then we're going to let the dwarves construct all of this, and while they're doing that, I'm going to add a new route. Now, this is going to be a very simple little route. The only thing that it's going to do is it's going to be hey, dwarf, get into this and ride it. And then we're going to make sure that they're not going to die immediately. And our way of doing that is we're just going to simply add wall pieces here, 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 and here. And of course there. Of course, there is one other thing that I need to note. They still will load the minecart up. So one use for this you can possibly have is, what if you want the dwarf to load the minecart and then jump into the minecart and then unload the minecart and then take the minecart back with the items? So it's a little bit useful in that regard. I find it a little bit dangerous to have dwarves riding in places. But let's see what happens when a dwarf comes and pushes this vehicle. There they go. They go do a lap, and then they hit the track stop, and then they leave. Now, we could remove this track stop, and then they would just kind of keep going ad nauseum until we turn the power off. But frankly, that would be a little bit dangerous and maybe unreasonable of us. But, maybe we should just remove it anyway. See what happens. Dwarf over here removes it, and there we go. So now we have a very fun little, very safe ride for our dwarf, where they can simply go in circles forever until we decide to release them. Now we can do this one of many different ways, but the way I'm choosing to do it is I'm going to remove this. And still, it is not quite going fast enough to derail. Well, that's a disappointment. I'm not gonna lie. I was actually hoping that this would end a little bit more excitingly. However, we're gonna let it keep messing around until we end with that. Wasn't actually as dangerous as I was expecting, but Saigon seems to have had a good time on the ride. If you would like to see more tutorials like this, check out the playlists on this YouTube channel or on the KitFox YouTube channel. Thank you very much to KitFox for commissioning these videos. And honestly, my name is Blind, and I've been streaming Dwarf Fortress on twitch.tv/BLINDIRL for quite some time, and I hope that you come over and check it out. Thank you very much for watching these videos, and I hope to see you in the next one.